You've been dancing to their tune for far too long, haven't you? Giving them the satisfaction of predictability, of knowing exactly what move you'll make next. They've scripted your role, directed your every step, confident you'd never deviate from their carefully crafted narrative. But then, out of nowhere, you changed the game. You delivered a plot twist they'll remember forever. And now they're scrambling, grasping at straws to regain control. The look of shock on their faces, it's almost poetic, don't you think? Here's the beauty of a plot twist. It's not about destruction, it's about revelation. When you upend the game, you don't just dismantle their control, you expose their weakness. You pull back the curtain on their manipulations, their schemes, their fragile sense of superiority. Suddenly, the ones who thought they were calling the shots find themselves in the spotlight, their flaws magnified, their plans unraveled. And you're the wild card they never saw coming. People like to think they've got you figured out. They box you in, slap a label on you, and expect you to stay put. But the moment you shatter their expectations, you rewrite the narrative, you become unpredictable, uncontrollable, unstoppable. They're left floundering in the aftermath, trying to make sense of a story that no longer revolves around their comfort, their rules. And that's the real power of a plot twist. It doesn't just change the story, it reclaims it. Delivering a plot twist isn't about revenge or pettiness. It's about liberation. It's about stepping out of the role you've been cast in and taking control of your own story. It's about saying, I'm done playing by your rules. This is my game now. And when you do that, you're not just breaking free. You're setting the stage for something far greater. You're showing them, and yourself, what you're truly capable of. Of course, they'll act surprised, offended even, as though your defiance is an act of betrayal. Let them. Their indignation is just a mask for their fear, their realization that the power dynamic has shifted. They've spent so long writing your script, never considering the possibility that you'd pick up the pen yourself. But now that you have, they're forced to confront a story they can't control, a plot they can't predict. Some might call you ruthless for shaking the foundation of their carefully built world. Maybe you are. But ruthlessness isn't a flaw when it's born from self-preservation. It's not cruelty. It's clarity. It's knowing when enough is enough, when the role you've been playing no longer serves you. And if that makes you the villain in their story, so be it. Better a villain with a purpose than a pawn with none. The thing about a plot twist is that it doesn't just disrupt, it inspires. It forces everyone involved to reevaluate their position, their motives, their actions. And while they're busy scrambling to adapt, you're already 10 steps ahead, crafting the next move, the next revelation. The game isn't just yours now. It's one they can't even begin to understand. And that, my friend, is a power few ever dare to wield. Your plot twist isn't just a moment. It's a message. It's a declaration that you are no longer who they thought you were, that you've evolved, grown, and become something far more formidable than they ever imagined. It's not about shocking them. It's about reminding yourself that you've always had the capacity for greatness, for resilience, for transformation. And now, the whole world knows it too. Here's the best part. A plot twist doesn't need validation. It doesn't seek applause or approval. It stands on its own, bold and unapologetic. And so do you. the ones who can't handle the change, they'll fade into the background, their relevance dwindling with every step you take forward. Because this story was never about them. It was always about you. Surprise is a weapon few truly understand. It shatters the mental frameworks we rely on, forcing us to confront the unfamiliar. The moment you delivered your plot twist, you disrupted their carefully laid plans, their assumptions about who you are, and their expectations of how you'd respond. It was a jolt, a crack in their mental armor that left them exposed. Surprises aren't merely unexpected, they're transformative. They rip apart the old script and demand a new narrative, one they're not prepared to write. When people think they've figured you out, they grow complacent. They map out your patterns, predict your behavior, and operate as though you're a static character in their story. But when you disrupt their script, you force them to think differently. They scramble to make sense of what they thought they knew, struggling to adapt to a reality they didn't anticipate. Your unpredictability becomes their chaos, their undoing, and your liberation. It's not just about surprising them. It's about shaking the foundation of their control. The brilliance of surprise lies in its ability to demand presence. It doesn't allow for autopilot reactions or rehearsed responses. When you deliver a plot twist, you pull them into the moment, strip them of their preconceptions, and leave them vulnerable. In those moments of vulnerability, they're no longer the ones holding power. You are. And the beauty of it? They handed you that power the second they underestimated you. Surprise doesn't just disrupt their mental script, it rewrites it entirely. The old rules no longer apply. The roles have shifted, and the game has changed. While they fumble to adjust, you're already 10 steps ahead, rewriting the narrative to fit your terms. Surprises force growth, not just for them, but for you. In breaking their expectations, you break free from their limitations, proving to yourself and the world that you are far more than they imagined. Your plot twist isn't an accident. It's an act of defiance. It's a statement that you refuse to be boxed in by their labels, their assumptions, or their control. Every surprise you deliver is a declaration of independence, a reminder that you are the author of your own story. And as the pages turn, they're left wondering how they ever thought they had you figured out. When you disrupt someone's mental script, you leave an impression they can't erase. Surprises linger. They replay in the mind, forcing reflection, reevaluation, and in some cases, regret. The brilliance of your plot twist lies not in the shock itself, but in its aftermath. It's the ripple effect that follows. The realization that they'll never see you the same way again. And isn't that the goal? To remind them and yourself that you are a force to be reckoned with. Surprises challenge complacency. They shake us out of the mundane, forcing us to question what we thought we knew. Your plot twist wasn't just a moment of shock. It was a catalyst for transformation. It disrupted the status quo and created space for something new, something better. And while they grapple with the implications, you stand firm, unshaken, because you've already adapted to the new reality you've created. In disrupting their mental script, you didn't just change their perception, you elevated your own. You proved that you're not a follower of their narrative, but the creator of your own. They'll remember this plot twist, not because of what it did to them, but because of what it revealed about you. It's not just a disruption, It's a revelation, a reminder that you are always capable of more. The power of surprise isn't in its shock value, it's in its ability to force growth. By delivering a plot twist, you force them to think differently, to see differently, to question their assumptions. And in doing so, you reminded them, and yourself, that the story is never truly written until you decide it is. Their mental script? It's obsolete. The only narrative that matters is the one you choose to create. So, let them stumble through the ruins of their expectations. Let them struggle to adapt to the new reality you forged. Because while they're busy piecing together their broken script, you're already writing the next chapter. Expectations are a double-edged sword. They build a framework of predictability, a blueprint of how someone assumes the world and you should behave. They thought they had you pinned down, boxed into the role they assigned you, but you turned their greatest asset into a weapon. You used their expectations against them, dismantling their carefully crafted illusions with a precision they never anticipated. Your plot twist wasn't just unexpected. It was a masterstroke, a calculated reversal of everything they thought they knew. People cling to their expectations because they provide comfort, a sense of control over the unknown. They rely on predictability to maintain their influence, their dominance. But when you shattered their illusions, you forced them into unfamiliar territory. Their expectations became the chains that bound them, limiting their ability to adapt to the new narrative you introduced. While they struggled to recalibrate, you thrived in the chaos, proving that flexibility beats rigidity every time. The beauty of using their expectations against them is in its simplicity. They set the trap, but you turned it back on them. They underestimated your capacity to evolve, to think ahead, to play the long game. And that underestimation was their downfall. They assumed you'd play your role, follow their script, and stay within the confines of their control. But you didn't. You flipped the script, turning their confidence into confusion and their certainty into doubt. Illusions are fragile things, held together by assumptions and reinforced by repetition. They thought their narrative was unbreakable, that their expectations were law. But your plot twist revealed the cracks in their foundation. You showed them that their illusions were just that, illusions, with no real substance to back them up. And once the illusion is shattered, it can't be pieced back together. It's gone, replaced by a reality they can no longer ignore. They'll claim your actions were a betrayal, an act of rebellion against the roles they assigned you. And in a way, they're right. But rebellion isn't inherently negative. It's the birth of freedom. By using their expectations against them, you freed yourself from the confines of their narrative. You proved that you are not a character in their story, but the architect of your own. And that realization is as liberating for you as it is terrifying for them. The plot twist you delivered wasn't just a moment of defiance. It was a declaration of independence. It said, loud and clear, that you will no longer be defined by their assumptions or constrained by their expectations. You've taken control of the narrative, leaving them to pick up the pieces of their broken illusions. And in doing so, you've redefined not just how they see you, but how you see yourself. Expectations are predictable, and predictability is their greatest weakness. When you step outside the lines they've drawn, you become something they can't control, something they can't understand. You become a force of nature, unbound by their limitations. And that unpredictability is your greatest strength, a constant reminder that you are capable of more than they ever imagined. Their illusions served a purpose. They made them feel powerful, secure, in control. But power built on false assumptions is fleeting. Your plot twist didn't just disrupt their control, it dismantled it entirely. It exposed their vulnerabilities, their reliance on the very expectations you've now rendered useless. And in that exposure, you've shifted the balance of power permanently in your favor. They'll remember your plot twist, not just because it surprised them, but because it forced them to see the world differently. It shattered their illusions, leaving them with no choice but to confront a new reality, one where you are no longer bound by their expectations. And as they scramble to adapt, you stand firm, knowing that you've taken the first step toward a story entirely your own. They thought they had all the pieces in place, the perfect strategy to control you, to keep you moving in predictable patterns. You were the pawn, the expendable piece, the one they underestimated at every turn. But what they didn't realize is that the game was never about the pieces. It was about the board. And you weren't just playing their game, you were designing it. When you revealed yourself as the architect, their entire illusion of control came crashing down. Pawns are meant to follow, to serve the strategy of others, to move in straight lines with no deviation. That's how they saw you. Small, predictable, insignificant. But every move you made was deliberate, calculated, leading them into a trap of their own making. They thought they were advancing, gaining control, but every step they took was another step closer to their downfall. And when the moment came, when you turned the board against them, their shock was almost comical. The brilliance of being the architect is that you're always 3 moves ahead. They were so focused on manipulating you, on controlling your moves, that they failed to see the bigger picture. They played small games, but you saw the entire board. Their arrogance blinded them to the truth. You were never a pawn. You were the one pulling the strings, guiding the game toward an ending they could never anticipate. And when the pieces fell into place, they weren't just outplayed, they were outclassed. Their confidence in their strategy was their greatest weakness. They thought their plan was flawless, their control absolute. But control is an illusion, one that crumbles the moment it's questioned. By revealing yourself as the architect, you didn't just disrupt their game, you exposed its flaws. You showed them that their strategy was built on false assumptions, that their power was never as strong as they believed. And in that moment, the balance of power shifted irrevocably. Being the architect means understanding the rules, but never being bound by them. They thought the game was static, that you were confined by the same limitations they were. But you rewrote the rules, introduced new dynamics, and changed the playing field entirely. They were playing chess while you were designing a game they couldn't even begin to comprehend. And in doing so, you turned their greatest strength, their control, into their greatest weakness. They'll never admit it, but the moment they realized you were the architect was the moment they lost. They'll call it luck, chance, anything but the result of your deliberate actions. But deep down, they know. They know that every move they made was part of your design, and that knowledge will haunt them a constant reminder of the game they thought they were winning, but never truly understood. The most powerful move you made wasn't defeating them, it was revealing the truth. The game they thought they controlled was always yours. By showing them the board, by pulling back the curtain on their illusion of power, you stripped them of their confidence, their strategy, their identity. And in that moment, you didn't just win the game, you transcended it. Pawns don't become architects by accident. It takes patience, vision, and a willingness to endure underestimation. Every time they dismissed you, every time they belittled you, they fed into the narrative you were crafting. They handed you the very tools you needed to dismantle their game. And when the moment came, when you revealed your true role, their disbelief was almost as satisfying as their defeat. Patterns are comforting. They provide predictability, stability, and the illusion of control. People rely on patterns to make sense of the world and the individuals within it. When someone breaks those patterns, it's like a sudden crack in the glass, unsettling, unavoidable, and impossible to ignore. That's what you did. You shattered their expectations, leaving them scrambling to make sense of the disruption. You delivered a plot twist so profound that it forced them to reevaluate not just their understanding of you, but of the entire dynamic they thought they controlled. When you follow expected patterns, you make it easy for others to box you in. They label you, categorize you, and predict your moves with confidence. It's not necessarily malicious. Sometimes it's just human nature. But the danger lies in allowing those labels to define you. By breaking those patterns, you challenge their assumptions. You force them to confront the reality that you're not as simple, predictable, or controllable as they once believed. It's a jarring realization, one that shakes their confidence and leaves them questioning everything they thought they knew. Breaking patterns isn't just an act of rebellion. It's a declaration of independence. It's saying, I am not who you think I am, and I will not play the role you've assigned me. This disruption is powerful because it shifts the narrative. Suddenly, they're no longer the ones in control. They're no longer the storytellers. You are. And in rewriting the script, you reclaim your autonomy, your identity, and your power. The brilliance of breaking expected patterns lies in its unpredictability. People don't prepare for what they can't foresee. They build their strategies, their judgments, their manipulations based on the assumption that you'll behave as you always have. But when you deviate, when you make a move that defies their expectations, their entire strategy crumbles. It's not just a moment of surprise. It's a seismic shift that forces them to start over, this time on uneven ground. Breaking patterns isn't about chaos. It's about evolution. It's about stepping into a new version of yourself, one that's unbound by past constraints. And as you evolve, you force others to evolve with you, or to fall behind. This isn't just a disruption. It's an invitation for them to see you in a new light, to recognize the depth and complexity they once overlooked. Whether they accept that invitation or not is irrelevant. What matters is that you've made it clear you're no longer confined by their understanding. When you break patterns, you don't just change how others see you, you change how you see yourself. You realize that the limitations you once adhered to were never real. They were constructs, reinforced by others' expectations and your willingness to meet them. But the moment you step outside those boundaries, you discover a freedom that's both exhilarating and terrifying. It's the kind of freedom that makes you unstoppable. This shift doesn't come without resistance. People don't like having their expectations challenged. It makes them uncomfortable, defensive, even angry. They may try to push you back into the mold, to reestablish the patterns that gave them a sense of control. But their discomfort is not your responsibility. It's a sign that you've disrupted their narrative, that you forced them to confront their own biases and assumptions. And that discomfort is where growth begins. Your plot twist isn't just a momentary shock. It's a catalyst for transformation. It forces those around you to reconsider their perspectives, to reevaluate their understanding of who you are and what you're capable of. For some, this will be a revelation. For others, it will be a threat. But for you, it's liberation. It's the realization that you are not defined by their expectations, but by your own choices, your own evolution, your own vision.